They say your greatest growth comes after your greatest pain. But no one tells you how hard it is to breathe when the betrayal comes from someone who once held your heart. My name is Camille, and I used to believe in love the way you believe in gravity, quiet, constant, reliable. But love failed me. Worse, it betrayed me. And the person I thought would protect me nearly destroyed everything I'd worked for. Before I tell you what happened, I just want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced a betrayal so severe it threatened to derail your dreams? If so, you're not alone. And if stories like mine inspire you, please take a moment to subscribe. These are the kinds of stories that prove resilience can win. Now, let me show you how. It all started with a kiss that turned into a business. His name was Drew. Handsome, confident, the kind of man who commanded attention the second he walked into a room. I met him at a networking brunch 2 years ago. He wasn't just charming, he was magnetic. We talked about entrepreneurship, tech innovation, and how the world underestimated women in business. I felt seen, understood, empowered. We began dating shortly after, and it was electric. He supported my startup dreams, came to my pitch meetings, took notes, told me I was brilliant. We'd stay up late building mock decks and talking about marketing funnels. I genuinely thought I had found my person, someone who believed in both me and my mission. Together, we launched Clarity Up, a software platform meant to help freelancers and small business owners streamline invoices, client onboarding, and time tracking. It was sleek, fresh, and actually solving a problem. And it was my idea. But I let Drew co-found it with me. We split everything 50-50 on paper and emotionally. At least, that's what I thought. In truth, I was doing 80% of the work. Coding, outreach, partnerships, marketing strategy. Drew was charming at investor dinners, but when it came to execution, I was the one pulling all-nighters. Still, I loved him, and I believed in us. The cracks started showing when we secured our first major investment, a $500,000 seed round from a VC firm in San Francisco. I was ecstatic.
Drew was detached.
He smiled during the meeting, but when we got home, his first words weren't congratulations. They were, now don't get cocky, Camille. We still need to prove ourselves. I laughed it off. Maybe he was just overwhelmed. Then came the late nights where he didn't come home. The vague texts. The way he flinched when I asked to review our financial dashboard together. We were supposed to be partners, but suddenly I felt like an intern in my own company. Still, I pushed forward. I presented our product at conferences. I secured 3 new contracts. I landed a feature in a rising business podcast. Things were moving. We were gaining traction. And then, he dumped me. No warning. No conversation. Just a short, cold message. This isn't working anymore. I think we need to go our separate ways, professionally and personally. I'll handle the lawyers. I thought it was a joke. I called him, straight to voicemail. I drove to our shared apartment. His things were gone. He had moved out overnight. What followed was a spiral of confusion and heartbreak. But that wasn't the worst of it. A few days later, I received a cease and desist letter from his legal team. He was suing me for breach of contract, claiming I had misappropriated company funds and made executive decisions without his approval. He'd filed paperwork to remove me as CEO of Clarity Up. I couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it had caved in. The man I loved was trying to erase me. And worse, he had receipts. Or so it seemed. Drew had been quietly collecting evidence for months. Emails taken out of context, slanted reports, manipulated financial spreadsheets. And I realized, with sickening clarity, that while I was building us a future, he had been building a case. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. My reputation was being torn apart.
Rumors started online.
Investors started backing away. Clients ghosted. And people I had once mentored believed him. Because in this world, if you're a man with a confident voice and a woman with emotion in hers, they believe the man. I had 2 choices. Give up or fight. I chose the latter. I lawyered up with what little savings I had left. My attorney, Sasha, was a no-nonsense firestorm in a gray blazer. She took one look at the documents and said, "He's trying to outplay you with drama, but he underestimated your intelligence." We began digging. Emails, paper trails, time-stamped commits in the software build, video recordings from conferences, internal Slack messages. I stayed quiet publicly. I didn't post a single thing. But behind the scenes, I was gathering every nail I'd use to seal this coffin. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming what I built. One night, as I sat in the dark eating takeout with Sasha, she looked at me and said, "You know what this is, right? This isn't about your company. It's about your comeback." She was right.
Drew had tried to bury me.
But he didn't realize I was a seed. And I was about to bloom louder than he could ever silence me. The media didn't care about the truth. All they saw was a headline. Co-founder Camille Taylor sued for mismanagement amid startup turmoil. No mention of how I designed the product. No mention of the 14-hour days I put in, or how I sacrificed my savings to get our first prototype built. Just scandal, sensationalism, and silence from people who once clapped for me. I never knew how quiet your phone could get when your name gets dragged. People I had mentored didn't return my calls. Influencers I'd interviewed with deleted my tags. One even messaged me, "Sorry, this doesn't align with my brand anymore." That one hurt. But what hurt more was that I started believing it. The narrative.
The shame. The lie.
I was sitting on my bathroom floor one night, phone screen lit, reading through hate comments I told myself I wasn't going to read. One said, "This is why women shouldn't run companies." Another, "She probably slept her way into that CEO title anyway." I had never felt smaller. But Sasha wouldn't let me stay there. The next morning, she called and said, "We're going on offense." We filed a counterclaim, not just defending my rights, but accusing Drew of intellectual property theft. I submitted evidence proving I had created ClarityUp's original framework 6 months before he even came into the picture. We also filed for fraud. Sasha discovered that Drew had been siphoning off small amounts of the company's funds to a shell account, cleverly masked as contractor fees. I didn't post about any of it.
I didn't need to.
My focus wasn't clearing my name in public. It was clearing my future in court. While the case brewed, I turned inward. And something unexpected happened. A former developer I worked with named Amira reached out. "I believe you," she said simply. "And if you're building again, I want in." That message was like a spark in a dark cave. We met up for coffee the next day. She was already halfway through an idea she'd been playing with, a tool to help solo entrepreneurs manage recurring client engagement using AI, a kind of personal business manager that handled contracts, billing reminders, and relationship tracking. "It's not a platform yet," she said. "It's just lines of code." I looked at her and smiled. That's all I had once, too. We got to work. Every morning at 7 a.m., we met at a co-working space. We ate bagels and wrote code. I pitched the concept to a few of my former supporters quietly.
2 said no.
1 ignored me completely. But one angel investor, Angela Chu, said yes. She didn't even blink. "I know your story. I never stopped believing in you. Let's rebuild." We called the new platform Pivot Path. Because that's what life had forced me to do. Pivot hard. Forge a new path. Word started spreading quietly in tech spaces. That the girl who got booted was back. That she had a new product. That this time she was solo. And then came the moment that made my blood run cold.
Drew emailed me.
Subject line, "We should talk." I didn't respond. 2 days later, I got another one. "I've been watching your progress. Maybe we were better as rivals than partners. Let's consider joining forces again. The market needs leaders like us." I laughed so hard, I nearly choked on my tea. This man tried to erase me. He tried to end me. And now that I'd risen again on my own, he wanted back in? I drafted a reply, then deleted it. Because no response is a response. Instead, I got back to work. Within 3 months, Pivot Path had over 12,000 beta users. By month 6, we were profitable. My name started popping up again, this time with different headlines. Ex-CEO returns with smarter, sharper product. Camille Taylor proves you can't cancel Grit, the startup that rose from sabotage. One reporter asked, "What was the turning point?" I smiled. The moment I realized I didn't have to fight for people who were committed to misunderstanding me. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. But the best part? I was doing it on my terms. By the time Pivot Path crossed 50,000 users, I had stopped checking the numbers daily. Not because I didn't care, believe me, I cared, but because I finally understood that success doesn't need to scream to be seen. It just needs to keep moving. Quietly. Consistently. Without seeking validation from the same people who once denied you. The lawsuits were still pending, but I had detached emotionally. Let Drew say what he wanted. Let people gossip. Let the ones who ghosted me now repost my wins like they'd always believed. I was past the need to correct every lie, defend every choice, or clap back at every shadow that tried to follow me. Because silence, when it comes from strength, is the loudest response of all. But just when I thought my journey was stabilizing, the past came knocking again. It was a Thursday morning. I was reviewing Pivot Path's newest UI updates when my assistant, Renee, walked into my office with a puzzled look. "There's someone here asking to speak with you," she said. "He says it's urgent and personal." I raised an eyebrow.
Who?
She hesitated. "Drew's brother, Marcus." I hadn't seen Marcus in almost a year. He was younger than Drew, softer-spoken, and someone I'd always liked. He never got involved in our business, and when Drew did what he did, Marcus vanished along with everyone else. I stood slowly. Let him in. He walked in holding his phone in one hand, a nervous smile on his face. "Camille, thanks for seeing me. I know I don't deserve your time." "Correct," I replied, folding my arms. "So make it count." He nodded, clearly prepared for hostility. "I came because Drew's spiraling. The case isn't going the way he thought it would. Your countersuit exposed things he never thought you'd find. He's losing investors. And I think he wants to talk." I gave a dry laugh. "Talk. Is that what we're calling it now?" "I'm not here to defend him," Marcus said quickly. "I just wanted you to know he's unraveling. He talks about you constantly. Obsessively. He says you ruined him." "No," I said, voice firm. "He ruined himself. I just survived it." Marcus nodded slowly. "I figured you'd say that. I just wanted to apologize. I should have reached out when it happened. I knew what he was doing was wrong, but I was scared." "Fear makes cowards of people," I said gently. "But courage is still a choice."
You're here now.
"That's something." He nodded again, offered a quiet thank you, and left. I didn't think much of it until a week later when Drew posted an open letter on LinkedIn. It was dramatic, overly polished, and clearly edited by a PR firm. He apologized to anyone who felt hurt by my actions and mentioned a regrettable chapter involving a close business partner, but never used my name. He was trying to control the narrative again, trying to make himself the misunderstood anti-hero.
I didn't respond.
I didn't share it. I didn't comment. I didn't even roll my eyes publicly. Instead, I shared a post of my own. A quiet one. It was a photo of me and Isla, my niece, building a model rocket in my backyard with a caption. "The greatest launches happen when you stay grounded. Here's to building, not performing." That post went viral. People saw what they wanted in it: strength, grace, subtle shade. But for me, it was just the truth. I was tired of fighting for a story I already owned. I didn't need revenge. I needed peace. Around that time, Pivot Path hit a major milestone. We closed a partnership with Syntrex Global, a platform with over 2 million users. They agreed to integrate Pivot Path tools into their backend systems, giving us our biggest expansion yet. When the press release went live, I received over 1,000 messages in 2 days. One stood out. "I remember when they tried to cancel you.
And now?
You're the blueprint." That word stayed with me. Blueprint. I wasn't just a comeback story. I had become a framework for others. For every woman who had been betrayed and broken. For every builder who got bulldozed. For every heart that still beat after being shattered. That realization pushed me into my next move. I decided to write a book. Not a memoir. A manual. Something raw. Actionable. A blueprint for survival in business and betrayal. I called it Resilient by Design. The publisher wanted a ghostwriter. I refused. Every word had to be mine. I wrote between meetings. On flights. Late nights with chamomile tea and lo-fi music. I didn't write for sympathy. I wrote for the woman in the dark with a broken laptop and an unshakable idea. The book launched quietly and soared. It hit bestseller status in 2 weeks. Bookstores began stocking it in their entrepreneurship and self-development sections. And the reviews? Overwhelming. This book gave me my voice back. Camille doesn't just share her pain, she hands you the tools to rise from yours. A masterclass in quiet power. A few months later, I was invited to speak at an international women's tech conference in Berlin. I stood in front of a room of 4,000 women and told the story, not with tears, not with anger, but with purpose. I ended my speech with this. Don't let a broken chapter convince you the book is over. Some stories just need a plot twist. That line was quoted everywhere. It became a mantra, a banner, even a tattoo for one fan who sent me a photo. My life wasn't just rebuilt, it was redesigned. Intentionally, boldly, without apology. And while Drew faded quietly into obscurity, his case eventually dismissed, his credibility eroded, I kept rising. Not to spite him, but to honor the woman I had become in the fire he lit. People often ask me, what was your turning point? They expect me to point to a moment, a contract, a courtroom win, a headline. But the truth? It wasn't a moment.
It was a mindset.
I stopped trying to prove anything to anyone, especially to the man who tried to erase me, and started living like I had nothing left to lose. Because I didn't. Drew took it all. My name, my reputation, the company I built from scratch. And in his attempt to humiliate me, he handed me the greatest weapon a woman can ever hold. A reason to start over, without fear. After the Berlin conference, everything changed. I came home to hundreds of emails, speaking invitations, interviews, podcast features. One from a major women's leadership platform titled, Camille Taylor, The Empire They Tried to Bury. I wasn't just known as the girl who bounced back. I was becoming a brand. I signed with a literary agent, then a speaking agency. Not because I wanted the attention, but because I wanted the influence to be useful. I created a scholarship program for young women in tech. I launched a mini accelerator for female-founded startups. Within weeks, 5 companies had been accepted into the first cohort. Women who had been told they were too emotional, too ambitious, too much. I told them, too much is exactly enough. We hosted weekly Zoom sessions. I reviewed pitch decks. I tore apart bad advice they'd been fed by investors. And I saw them start to glow. One by one, week by week. Meanwhile, Pivot Path grew from a tool to a platform. We launched analytics features, integrated with global payment providers, hired a full-time team of 15. We weren't a comeback anymore. We were a case study. One night, as I was preparing to speak at another summit, I got an unexpected call. My old mentor, Jillian. She had disappeared during the scandal. Not a word of support. No, I believe you. Just vanished. But now she was back. Her voice a little too bright. Camille.
Girl.
I've been watching you. I knew you'd bounce back. I stayed silent. I'd love to chat about maybe collaborating. You've got such momentum, and I think we could do some powerful things together. I wanted to scream, to ask her where she was when I cried myself to sleep, when I was losing everything, when I was fighting in courtrooms while being humiliated online. But I didn't. I simply said, I'm glad you're well, Jillian. I'm focused on building right now. Let's circle back later. She never called again. Because that's the thing about growth. It forces people to confront who they were while you were buried. And most can't face it. By then, I had stopped measuring success in followers or checks. I measured it in impact, in who I had become, in what I was finally creating without apology. But Drew wasn't done. Oh no. A blog post surfaced one morning, penned under a pseudonym, claiming Pivot Path was just a rebranded knockoff of a stolen idea. It was filled with half-truths and passive-aggressive phrasing. But I knew Drew's style too well. It was him. He was still trying, still clinging, still convinced that if he could just control the narrative, he could control the outcome. I didn't flinch. Instead, I posted a short message. A woman who's moved on doesn't look back. And a thief yelling at the architect doesn't make the blueprint any less brilliant. That post was shared over 30,000 times. Within days, the blog was removed. Probably by his lawyer. And with that, the last whimper of his sabotage faded into irrelevance. I realized something profound that day. Drew hadn't been trying to win. He'd been trying to keep me from winning without him. And when I proved I could, it broke him. But I wasn't building out of bitterness anymore. I was building with vision. Pivot Path's third funding round launched later that quarter. We oversubscribed within 48 hours. I turned down 3 VC firms that previously ghosted me during my scandal. They offered apology emails, flowers, promises. I replied with a single sentence. Thank you for your interest, but I've learned the value of being believed the first time. Our funding round was led by Angela Chu again, my first believer, the one who showed up when I was still climbing out of the mud. She cried during the closing dinner. You didn't just build a business, she said. You built a movement. I smiled through tears. I just got tired of waiting for someone to rescue me. That night, I went home and sat alone in my living room. I poured a glass of wine. I lit a candle, and I looked around at everything I had created, every inch of it built from ashes. No man behind it, no borrowed clout, no cosigner, just me, just Camille. And finally, that was enough. I always thought the apology would feel different, like closure, like vindication, like something inside me would finally exhale. But when Drew finally stood in front of me again, eyes tired, posture slouched, holding nothing but a quiet, pitiful sort of regret, I didn't feel healed. I felt done. It happened on a Tuesday. I was walking out of a tech forum panel in San Diego, where I just delivered a talk on ethical leadership and startup sustainability. My schedule was tight. Next stop, a mentorship brunch with 3 rising female founders. As I moved through the hotel lobby, I heard my name, Camille. I turned, half expecting a fan or press contact. But it was him. Drew stood there, suit wrinkled, face thinner, the same boyish charm in his features, but dulled. Like someone who had used all his energy pretending and finally ran out of excuses. I wasn't sure if you'd stop, he said. I didn't. I just stared. I saw your talk, he continued. I've seen all of them, actually. You're everywhere now. I nodded slowly. I'm busy. What do you want? He swallowed hard. To say I'm sorry. I almost laughed. Not out of amusement, but because it sounded rehearsed. Predictable. A final move in a play I no longer cared to watch. I know it doesn't change anything, he added quickly. I know I ruined a lot. Maybe everything. I lost myself. I was scared of your success. Scared that I was nothing without the illusion of control. I blinked. You lied about me, I said. You tried to destroy my career. You weaponized our relationship and rewrote our story to paint yourself as the victim. I know. You humiliated me publicly.
Sued me.
Spun a false narrative. And when that didn't work, you tried to discredit my second company. You built a house of sabotage. I know. And now you want what? Redemption? He didn't answer. I took a step forward.
Calm.
Unshaken. I forgive you, I said. His eyes widened. You do? I forgive you, I repeated, but I will never forget. And I will never offer you access to any part of my world again. He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. Let this moment be your closure, Drew. You got your apology. I got my empire. Let's not mistake one for needing the other. And with that, I walked away. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel relief. Because what I'd built had nothing to do with his absence or presence. It was all mine. That night, I returned to my hotel suite, opened my laptop, and stared at the dashboard. Pivot Path was preparing for its biggest product launch yet. We'd secured a partnership with a major accounting platform that would bring our software to over 1.3 million small business owners worldwide. We had grown from a redemption story to a market leader. Quietly, ethically, efficiently. And yet, something still lingered. Not pain, not anger, reflection. So, I opened my notes app and wrote something just for me. You thought breaking me would make you powerful. You didn't know I'd build an empire in the silence you left behind. The next day, my assistant Renee handed me a letter. It had no return address. The handwriting was familiar. I opened it and found 2 lines. You were always the real founder. I just held the pen.
D.
I folded the note and placed it in a box I kept in my home office. Inside it were all the pieces of my past, the original sketches for Clarity Up, the legal letters, old notes from friends who disappeared during the storm. I called it my box of becoming, because that's what it held, not pain, but proof.
Proof that I survived.
That I rebuilt. That I didn't just recover, I elevated.
And now?
Now I was planning something bigger. A venture capital fund exclusively for women and non-binary founders who had been overlooked, undervalued, or flat out dismissed. I called it Rooted, because when they try to bury you, they forget you're a seed. And I was ready to plant forests. We launched a quiet beta. 5 founders. 5 ideas. All underfunded. All brilliant. Each pitch felt familiar. A room of hesitation. A woman filled with fire. A dream on the edge of being extinguished. And I said yes. Again and again and again. Because I remembered what it felt like to be inches from giving up. I remembered what it felt like to be the punchline, the warning sign, the scandal. Now I was the standard. The same industry that once doubted me now sought my signature. The same voices that once whispered about me now quoted me. But none of that meant as much as the look in those founders' eyes when I said, I believe you. No strings. No games. Just room to grow. Because belief is a form of power. And I had learned, painfully and beautifully, how to wield it. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I've learned the truth is more elegant than that. Real success doesn't seek revenge. It replaces the need for it. 3 years after Drew tried to erase me, I stood on a stage in front of 10,000 people. Not just women, people. Investors. Builders. Creators. Survivors. It was the Global Women in Tech Summit. I was the closing keynote. Behind me, a massive screen displayed 5 simple words. You can build from nothing. I stood in a sleek white suit, hair pulled back, holding nothing but a wireless mic and a story the world thought they already knew. I told them about Clarity Up, about the betrayal, about being erased. But then I told them what no one expected, that it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it burned down a world I didn't realize was holding me back. And in the ashes, I found something I never knew I needed. Myself. I told them about Pivot Path, about Rooted, about the fund that was now backing over 30 female-led ventures across 3 continents. I told them about Isla, my niece, who watched me rebuild from the living room floor with crayons in her hand and now said she wanted to be a company starter. And when I finished, the room stood as one. Not because of me,
but because they saw themselves.
Because we all know what it's like to be buried by doubt, by someone else's insecurity, by heartbreak masked as ambition, by a betrayal that's so calculated it makes you question your entire reality. And yet here I was, not broken, not bitter, brilliant. That night, I returned to my suite and sat alone on the balcony. I looked out at the city lights and whispered a quiet thank you to the woman I used to be, the one who cried on the floor, the one who almost walked away, the one who stayed quiet and then chose to rise. She was the real MVP. Later that year, I was asked to do a documentary. I declined the first 3 requests. I didn't want to be turned into a trope. But then one production team approached me differently. They said, "We want to make something for the women who are still buried." That line got me. So I agreed. We called it Unwritten. Because for every woman whose story was hijacked, whose name was slandered, whose voice was silenced, the pages were never torn out. They were just paused. And now they were ready to be resumed. When it aired, I didn't expect the reaction. Emails.
Tears.
Thank you letters from teenagers. Messages from CEOs. A handwritten note from a 76-year-old woman who said, "I thought I missed my moment. Now I know I can still write a new one." We released a companion guide. It sold out in 2 days. We launched a mentorship circle. Thousands applied. And in the quiet of my office, I smiled at the irony. The man who tried to destroy me ended up becoming the origin story of something unshakable. And no, I didn't send him the documentary.
I didn't owe him that.
But I did owe myself something. One final act of closure. So I took a solo trip to a cabin in Washington State. No phone. No meetings. Just me, the forest, and a journal. I wrote myself a letter. Not as Camille the CEO. Not the speaker. Not the founder. Just Camille, the woman who loved deeply, fell hard, and clawed her way out with grace. You were never just a comeback. You were a creation. You were never broken. You were breaking ground. You didn't just survive him. You surpassed everything. I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and burned it in the fire pit outside. Not out of rage, out of reverence. Because some chapters aren't meant to be reread. They're meant to be honored and closed. Today, I don't define myself by what happened to me. I define myself by what I did next. I built. I rose. I gave back. And I never, never let their laughter be the last sound I heard. So if you're listening to this, and you've been broken, if someone tried to write your ending before your first act was even done, let me be proof that endings are lies. Your story is still being written, and it might just lead to your greatest success.